And
you're bored by this conversation, so this is very hard for you to pay attention to.
Yes.
If I start talking about Rosemary Clooney,
I'm all over it.
You're all over it because that's your automatic attention. Like that's something interesting and engaging to you. Hello, Megan.
Hello, Michelle.
Welcome to Sisters.
Sisters.
They were never such devoted sisters. I'm so glad to be here with you today.
Oh, man. It's a treat, as always.
Yes. Okay, so we're trying video.
Yes.
For real this time. We said we were trying it before, but we really weren't. We weren't quite ready. We had some...
No, we were not quite ready at all.
Mm-mm. You moved.
This is true.
And now we're not in the same room. So a lot of things had to be learned.
Yes.
And I feel like we've learned them.
It was a very high learning curve for both of us.
Yes. So if anybody else out there who does podcasts or anything on YouTube, we have major respect for you.
100%.
Okay, so today we're going to, I usually bring up a topic, right, of some sort, and then we dig into that brain of yours, that Rosie's brain, which is funny because I call you Megan, but it's Rosie's brain.
I guess you could just call me Rose on this podcast.
That's
Why not?
True. Whatever. We'll confuse everyone. It'll be great. And
because our voices already sound so similar, so it's already hard enough to tell us apart.
Exactly. I remember when we were kids, we would definitely be mistaken on the phone.
Yes.
For sure. Not in person.
Basis.
Like if you look at us, we look different, but yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then after we kind of dig in that brain of yours, then we look at things that have worked for you or things you're trying or a mad request from the community to say, please tell us your ideas because we don't know. Right?
Please.
And what we're doing is really getting into the neurospiciness, the neurodivergent awesomeness of your brain. And right now we're really focusing on sort of symptoms of ADHD, attention deficit disorder, but we kind of like to call it attention deficit distinction.
That's right.
And I found something, I read something from the Cleveland Clinic, and it was online, and I was reading through some things again with symptoms, and they were talking about your attention and that there's two distinct types of attention.
Okay.
And that people with ADHD have different frontal lobes, which the frontal lobe of our brain, right, is where all decision making and prioritization. It's that butler. Somebody we had listened to had said it was sort of the butler in your brain reminding you have to do this, that, or the other.
The butler or the goblin.
Yeah, or the goblin, right, for sure. Yep. If you're interested in the goblin concept, I think that's back an episode or two. And that basically, that part is called direct attention. And like you have to direct your attention to something, and that's actually quite difficult for people with ADHD, and it actually develops a little bit later in life than people who don't have ADHD.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are we talking about again? I've already lost track of what it is.
Yeah, exactly. So basically two types of attention, direct attention.
Okay. So the butler...
And then there's sort of like automatic attention.
Okay. So the butler is the direct attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
And you're bored by this conversation, so this is very hard for you to pay attention to.
Yes.
If I start talking about Rosemary Clooney...
I'm all over it.
You're all over it because that's your automatic attention. Like that's something interesting and engaging to you. However, what's interesting that I found in this, and then we'll talk a little bit more how I want to discuss it, is they said for people with ADHD, it is easier. You have better automatic attention than I do. So you have a stronger ability to pay attention to the things that you're engaged with or interested in than I do. And I thought that was sort of interesting. So I thought I would bring up a scenario for you. So direct attention is the one that's like you're bored, not engaged, very difficult to do. So things like chores, unless you were engaged with them and really excited about them, might be harder for you to attend to.
True. Well, also, even when we were talking about this, it's not even that I'm bored, because obviously this is fascinating for both of us, but it's that I don't understand. I can't process the words that you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
So the butler is not doing the good translation for me. And I'm like, hey,
Yes. And that might also be due to sort of learning styles and things as well, like not auditory in nature, maybe. So there's sort of these, what they call comorbidities, things. I mean, it sounds horrible, but right. Nobody's dying here in this situation,
right.
but that you have also a higher predisposition to other things like having learning issues or having depression or having, all these other things that can make it difficult to attend as well. So, okay. So my question for you, the thing I wanted to dig in a little bit about is you've been doing for the podcasts, these tomato timers, right?
Yes.
And it's the Pomodoro timer method. And basically you set the timer for what, 25 minutes?
Yeah. It's 25 minutes of focused work.
Okay. And then you take 5 minutes and you do something different.
Yeah, usually you get up and do something physical, go to the bathroom, get some water, but something that's physical that like moves your body out of whatever space you've been in.
Okay, and this is a strategy, so we're kind of going backwards a little bit in the podcast, but I wanted to bring this up because I noted a difference between you and I. I tried your tomato method. How many tomatoes can you get through when you're like hyper focused, when you're really ready to go?
Probably 6 to 8, maybe.
So you can do 6 to 8 chunks of 25 minutes, 5 minutes off, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes, but like 6 to 8 of those repetition.
Yeah. And I will make a caveat of the fact that it is challenging at times to stop myself after 25 minutes because my brain just wants to keep going. But I've learned that if I don't stop myself, then I actually burn out faster.
Okay. So this is fascinating to me.
Okay.
And the reason I want to talk about it is today I want to talk a little bit about fatigue and how all of this impacts you. But I wanted to tell you and anyone listening, that I can do 2 tomatoes. I can't even get through the second one.
Really?
Really, truly cannot do it. I'm like, I can get all the things I need to get done during the day. But if you ask me to hyper focus, I am exhausted. I had to take a nap. I was like 2 tomatoes in and I'm like, oh my God. I literally got out my yoga mat in my office and I closed off the window to my door and I laid down for 15 minutes. I was completely spent. Yeah, 100% spent. So I'm fascinated by, you have always said that your energy like really ebbs and flows. And so I wanted to kind of ask you about that and see if you could kind of think of some times when this happens. Like even if it's with creating the podcast or it was at school, or what happens with your energy level? You talk a lot about energy level and I'm sort of interested in that.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is we've been, I've moved. And so we had about 8 or 9 podcasts already pre-done, pre-recorded. Mm-hmm. And when I got through all those pre-recorded and we were kind of getting everything set up, I started going, week to week. And so I would be up until, I was up until like 2 o'clock in the morning one time doing a podcast. And the only reason I did it was because I knew that Taryn was going to listen on Thursday. And I was like, I have to be there for Taryn. I love you, Taryn. You keep me going. So I was able...
And by meaning doing the podcast, that was like the editing, because you do all the editing, all the sound, all the mastering, everything, and then posting it everywhere, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So I got it all edited, and I only had a day to do it because stuff had happened, and so I only had that day, and so I went into like 2 o'clock in the morning, and then my brain was just on, and I could not fall asleep. After I finally got into bed. And then what I noticed was like I could hyper focus, right? I could get it done. It sucked, but I could do it. It's a lot harder now as I'm getting older.
The podcast didn't suck, by the way, but it was sucky for you to have to do the enduro.
Yes. The experience sucked for me personally, because I wanted to also make sure we had a good product and I have my own set of standards and whatnot. But I distinctly remember the next day being like, oh, thank God, like I'm doing nothing. Like I earned this day of nothing, which then turned into 2 days, which then turned into 3. And then it turned into like me having trouble just, getting out of bed and living and being a part of society. Like it was really hard.
Okay. So you hyper-focused, you did this, 12-hour enduro or whatever it was.
I think it was like an 18-hour enduro.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you were figuring out a lot of technical details on that particular podcast, as I remember it as well.
Yeah, it was the first one that we recorded apart. So with this whole setup.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn 2 different programs. The sound wasn't the way that I normally like it because I got my undergrad in sound design for the theater. So like it wasn't up to my standards and I was trying to figure out if I could fix it or not. So I spent like the first half of the day just focusing on technical issues. And then I realized you got to get a podcast out. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And you're like, should we re-record? And I was like, no, we have it. It's fine. I have to radically accept. Radical acceptance.
Okay, so I want to take you back then, and then we'll dig in a little bit more into what it feels like for you when you're saying you're out of commission. It sounds like out of needing really like a lot of staring out into nothingness time. But I want to take us back to when you started school. Maybe an early school memory. It could be middle school too, because maybe you don't remember earlier. But what was it like for you energy-wise? Do you remember that? Do you remember going to school and feeling drained when you got home, excited when you got home? Do you remember what that was like?
Oh, I always loved getting home.
Getting home was the best.
Because I could just flit around in the house and do my own thing, and I could run around and create and do whatever I wanted to. I remember
and you always were.
Oh yeah.
The minute you got home, there was like construction paper out and glue and like glitter and who knows where it ended up, but
an explosion of my ADHD brain.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah, no, school was really tough because I just remember having to sit all the time and be quiet. And those are 2 things I'm not good at.
Yeah.
So that was hard. And I didn't know basic skills to kind of help me. If fidget spinners had been a thing when I was a kid, or if these fidgeting devices had been around and more popular, that probably would have helped me. Right before we started, I was like, oh, I got to find something to do with my hands. And so
are you going to out yourself right now? What do you have in your hands?
Right now, I have a nail. It's like a cuticle.
Oh.
It's a cuticle thing.
Oh, but it's a little bit rough.
It's got texture right here. So it's
cylindrical, but it's got a little roughness. So you're just kind of like,
I'm just doing this. I'm just kind of,
you're twirling it in your fingers, between your fingers.
Because I can feel the texture in my fingers.
Your nails look really sparkly and fun.
Oh my gosh,
by the way.
They are so holographic. I love them.
You have the best nail polishes always. Okay, so think though back about like you got to school, your energy would it be depleted while you were at school? Did you feel, oh, I can't get through the day, or was that not an issue at that point?
Oh yeah, no, I always felt tired. I think I went to the nurse's office more than anyone else.
Frequent flyer in the nurse's office.
Yeah,
okay.
No, they knew me really well.
And was it headaches, or was it just feeling like you needed to walk and that was the only way to get out, or?
That I don't fully remember. I mean, probably headaches. I know I've had headaches for a really long time. And I notice like if I have to sit for a long period of time, I do get a headache because my body just does not, the amount of energy it takes for me to stay still. I think we talked a previous episode about how my brain's sort of like a car engine. And if you work it too hard, you can overheat it.
Yeah.
And so the act of physically sitting still and being quiet requires so much brain power.
Because you have to kind of like, are you having to say to yourself, Megan, sit still?
Yeah. I mean, I'm having to, like, I have the urge to want to move my arms, and
well,
I'm
you
like,
should
hey,
just
you
do
can't.
that when you're here. Like, you move, baby. You like be in the world the way you need to. We all need to move more anyway, but
it's hard because like I know I make a lot of sounds probably when I'm moving, so we're trying to figure it out.
Well, we could at least have a break. We could have like a little like quick do a little dance. moment.
That's true.
Right. We can do that. We get to make Rosie's world, so we get
That's
to
right.
do it how we want.
We can do it however we want.
Yeah. And if you can't handle seeing Meg move on the YouTubes
Guess
that we
what?
post to, then don't
You can turn it
watch.
off.
Just listen.
Or just turn it off. Whatever.
Turn it off. Whatever. Either way. Yeah, for sure. So you noticed when it was hard to pay attention, and these would be things that were not automatic to attend to, right? Because you're not engaged necessarily with some of the things they would have you doing in school. You'd have to have directed attention. You'd have to really force yourself to do the rote things, the things you do again and again that maybe wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times too, for me personally, the directions were all verbal. Very few were written down. And so I could not retain the number of directions in my head.
Because you also have short-term memory issues, right? So it's hard for you to keep direction. So like even when I was telling you all that stuff about directed versus automatic attention, you're having to keep words and things in your brain.
Yeah, that don't come naturally. Like, so it was, just having to keep that in my head and try to process it all was challenging because there's something about the disconnect. Same reason why I struggle with Shakespeare. There's a lot of words that you don't hear very often, and so it's challenging to pick them up.
Well, and you were even saying like the list of things. We talked about that in a podcast that mom listened to our podcast, by the way.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, she outed herself because she was like, well, you know the list. And I'm like, oh, she heard us talk about the list. So at least we have one fan, our mother.
I love you, Mommy. Love you, Mama.
She's so funny. So she said, but it was interesting because you said vacuum. You know, she would say vacuum and you had all these pictures in your head of what that could mean, right? And it wasn't almost none of the pictures in your head of what you were thinking of was you vacuuming a floor.
Was actually vacuuming a floor. I know, like my hand, my pant leg.
You made a short about that. So if anyone hasn't seen it, there's one about vacuuming. That was hilarious that we talked about. But anyway, so, okay. So you're at school, you're really trying to direct your attention. Mm-hmm. We know that for people with ADHD, that takes longer to mature. At what point in school did you feel like, oh, I got this? Because you went all the way through your graduate work, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I started to get it my senior year in college, in undergrad.
Okay, so let's just break this down.
Mm-hmm.
That means from age 5 to 20-ish, 21?
Mm-hmm.
What did it feel like to you during that period before you got it? Or what was, like, what images come to your mind when I say that?
Flying by the seat of my pants.
Just
that was just pure chaos. Like, oh my God, am I going to get it done? I forgot. Holy shit, it's due tomorrow. Like, just schoolwork was so hard. And it was a double-edged sword because it was like remembering where I wrote it down. I could write it down that I had something due, but then remembering to look at the thing that I had written down.
That's not going to happen.
I still have nightmares to this day of being in school and having things due, like having tests that I have to take that I'm not prepared for. Like I had an entire multi-dream, Michelle. Okay, hold on. Okay. Yeah. I had a multi-night dream. It wasn't all in a row, but it's like over probably a couple months of me going back to high school.
Yeah.
And knowing that I had graduated high school in my dream.
Okay. So in your dream, you were cognizant of the fact that you have graduated.
Yes. I have I have a degree, right?
Okay.
But I am back in senior year of high school. And mind you, there's one class that I have not been to all semester.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure I'm going to fail.
Okay. Even though you've graduated.
Well, and that's what I keep telling myself. I'm like, well, Megan, you're fine because you graduated. So it's okay. You're good. Like, even if you fail this one, like this degree doesn't really count. Right. but
so you're rationalizing with yourself over the course of several weeks that you're okay, even though you're going to fail this.
Yes.
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, I just had a dream last night about going to graduate school and again, multi-series dreams. And then last night the dream was I'm here in Monterey and I'm having a conversation with somebody and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't go back to graduate school this semester.
You're like, wait, I forgot to go back.
I forgot to go back to graduate school. Like I only had one semester left. Why am I not back in graduate school?
So your nightmare dreams are almost solely about forgetting things.
Yes.
It's born from experience, right? You have forgotten things over the years, right? And that'll be a different episode. But I'm really curious, like what that does to you energetically, because if you're always on edge, like you're always worried, does that take a lot of energy from you?
Oh yeah. It is completely anxiety producing and it's exhausting having to realize that I forgot something because I'm constantly trying to remember it. So I'll have it in my brain and I'm trying to remember it. And I'm like, okay, I can't forget that. And then I forget it. And I'm like, oh, what was that thing that I had to remember? And oh my gosh. And then I get to the place where I'm supposed to have it and I've forgotten it. So then I start beating myself up because I forgot it. So the amount of time I spend just on one thing alone is an exorbitant amount of time.
And then there's also sort of the punishing yourself for doing it. The negative
the
self-talk.
The shaming for sure. That like I should have, that somehow it's my fault. You know, I could have done better. It shouldn't have happened. If I was better, if I was different, it would be okay. If I just grew up, you know, Megan, if you just remembered, it's so easy, Megan. How come you can't remember?
And that must have been stuff that myself and others said to you repeatedly growing up.
Yeah. How do you not remember? Like you must be lazy. You must just not care. I also heard, you know, you just don't have the aptitude for it, clearly.
Oh, yeah. You actually had a principal or something say that to you, didn't you?
Yeah, she said, you're never going to make it in life, so why bother trying?
How
Third
old
grade.
were you?
Third grade.
Third grade? Oh my God.
And
here it is, you've gone on to graduate school at the Actors Studio, you've been a professor, you've done all these amazing things. Wow.
yeah.
This kind of goes to, you know, I mean, I definitely want to talk about strategies, but I think there's something I was talking to our mom about is just this need to continue to be part of the community that's advocating for education and for understanding, because I know as a family, we didn't have that. And she was saying to me this morning, actually, that I said, you know, if you had known more, she goes, oh yeah, we were just blamed as parents that there was that we were doing something wrong. And that if, you know, I said, well, how did you have two kids who didn't struggle with this and one that did, and somehow that's still your fault? I mean, it didn't make any sense, right? But she had gone to a counselor, I guess, and they, you know, to try to find out more information about how to help you. And it quickly became that she was working. And this was the problem. And, you know, this just, for any working moms and parents, awful. You know, everybody out there, I mean, you've got more than one kid. The fact that one of them is going through this and not knowing, we didn't know then, right? Back then in the 80s that or at least we didn't have the information that it was biological in nature, that this wasn't anything you could help and could do. You know, I mean, there's strategies, and we'll talk about those, but of managing your energy, managing your attention, all of those things. But it wasn't anything we knew about then.
I had no idea that mom was shamed like that. I had no clue.
And I remember her talking about it, but I didn't remember it I didn't connect it to ADHD because we didn't have that diagnosis for you even, right?
Yeah,
so
it wasn't until
just like, oh, Megan's being Megan.
Yeah.
Right. And so how do we help Megan stop being Megan?
Yeah.
It wasn't, okay, this is an identifiable thing. And I look back on that time, and I mean, it's really hard as somebody who loves you to know that you were dealing with this and dealing with it so much on your own. And that none of us, not only did we not help, we made it worse oftentimes. Right. And I think we started.
I don't think it was on purpose.
No,
you know?
It wasn't out of any, you know, I mean, I don't sit there and beat myself up all the time because I understand I did what I didn't understand, but like, you know, better, you got to do better. Right. So
Michelle, is this podcast your penance?
Penance? No, No, this is actually so joyful because
Okay,
it's
good.
so fun to actually sit and hear from your perspective and get to dig in because it's so different than my experience. Not always. I mean, I certainly have elements of this, and I think people listening that talk to me about it that have listened, friends of mine, you know, they'll say, oh yeah, that I relate to this piece of it. But to hear you talk about basically every symptom, if you look it up and you're dealing with all of them, I think you get a whole bunch of neurospicy chili peppers on this, and that, you know, that makes it even more challenging, I think.
Well, I think we've identified that I have the sexiest brain.
You do.
It is the spiciest of all spices.
Spicy, sexy. It's super awesome.
It is a typical ADHD brain.
Typical ADHD. I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Let's go with that.
But but one of the
yeah.
things that I found really fascinating is that hearing that mom was shamed. You know, I was telling you, I was listening to this documentary on NPR about the eugenics wars and how this was just ingrained into our culture.
Yeah, and eugenics really is the idea that there's genetically perfect people, right? Mm-hmm. And this can go down a rabbit hole of all types. But one of the things, as we were talking about this, I was telling you, and I know you've done more research now, is that people who had neurospicy brains were considered to be, because they weren't normal, that they should basically not exist in the world and they should be taken out of mainstream life.
Yeah,
right?
that they should be
sterilized and not have anymore. Right.
Yeah. And that, I think it's interesting because listening to how this gentleman came to the idea of eugenics, that it was hereditary in his mind. You know, that it was passed down from the parents. And so then the parents were at fault. So then it makes more sense why mom was shamed.
Shaming. Yeah.
Yeah. That like it's her fault because she passed it along and therefore she must be doing something about it. And it's like they thought that, you know, these people were so much more superior. But then, and that because they were trying to get rid of poverty and they were trying to get rid of vagabonds and alcoholism and all that. But then the Great Depression hits and then you've got Harvard lawyers who can't eat or feed themselves, you know, and then it just completely wipes out the whole idea of, oh, poverty is somehow hereditary. But the mental stigma of it, though, I think never left. And
actually, you know, I think you very likely could have been institutionalized at a certain time. I think it was 60s when that sort of started to end, but that you know, kids like you would have been put into hospitals and basically kept there, right?
Yeah.
And not allowed to get out. So I think that this whole concept of advocacy is so important. And in terms of you and this particular podcast, I'm curious like how you advocate for yourself so that you don't end up completely depleted, because you can hyper-focus so well. Even going into eugenics, I'm sure you went down a rabbit hole and read every single thing that you could find, you know, listen to multiple things. That tends to be what you do, right? When you get interested in something. So how do you advocate for yourself now so that you don't end up, because you said you had like 3 or 4 days after that one podcast where you were just completely spent.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and then talk about sort of the advocacy for yourself or how you're managing that?
I think I am still struggling with that one. I beat myself up pretty badly when it comes to my energy being down, because I know that I can hyper focus. I know that I'm capable of doing this, and I can't imagine, well, why do I feel this way today? Why is today the day that I'm exhausted? And I think a lot of it has been just us having these conversations has forced me on a regular basis to question and ask myself and process where I'm at, you know. And I think throughout the week we're working together and you're asking me questions that I'm not really thinking about. So I think that's the first part is just getting to know myself and having it be okay that I can learn and accept who I am. That's the first part, is the acceptance. So I'm developing a user manual for my brain. I think the other part of it I'm recognizing, and the podcast is just sort of a easy way to explain it because I'm in it right now. I realized that I spent the last couple of days just kind of trying to get ahead. We're trying to get, so I'm not working on the podcast the night before.
Yeah.
Because I did it like last week's podcast, I was able to get it out. I was able to finish around 10 o'clock in the evening, and I had so much more energy the next day. And so I'm learning that if I can hyperfocus, but in hyperfocusing, it actually stunts my day for the next day, or, it's at a great cost.
So it takes so much energy that it depletes your energy for the next couple of days.
Yeah. If you're in a car that has low oil in the engine, yeah, you can run it. You can continue to run it with low oil. But if you were to add more oil when the light first comes on, it's going to be a lot less money for you in the long run. But if you continue to run that engine with low oil, then now you're not lubricating certain mechanisms, and you can bust your engine, and it makes for a much larger, bigger problem. And I think that that's like what hyperfocusing does for me on some level. It's an addictive thing, hyperfocusing, because it feels really good to be in a zone and to like, oh yeah, I'm getting stuff done, because I'm never getting things done, right? So it's like, look at me, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
But it comes at a great cost. And so what I'm learning is like having to figure out, okay, if I can get ahead, and maybe I spend a little time, I know I'm hyper-focusing right now so that I don't have to hyper-focus down the road. Or, gosh, I don't know. It's like
like shorter bursts, I feel like. It's like you're not using up all your fuel in one. You're saving some or something, maybe.
Honestly, that 5-minute break is huge. It is really difficult to do the 5-minute break, and sometimes I don't. I just pass through it. And I notice that when I do pass through those 5-minute breaks, it really does mess me up.
Okay, I just challenge anybody out there who does not have ADHD that's listening to this to try doing this. I'm telling you, it's like this, and it made so much sense to me when I was reading that this idea of directed attention versus automatic attention. And so when you get into that like groove, that's like that automatic attention. You're not having to push yourself to do it. But wow, does that take up a ton of energy for me. And you, I think it still does take up energy. It's just easier for you to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's why I have to be cognizant of it. It's a double-edged sword.
It's like a superpower, but then also a super drainer.
Well, we've talked about how I do these tomatoes, and then I have to eat afterwards. I need protein. I need something to like help fuel my brain, because
that's a real
you're working
thing.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious out there if anyone else notices these ebbs and flows in energy and kind of how they handle it, how they do the self-care. I know for you, part of the self-care, it seems, is this timer and really kind of forcing yourself to stop at times when it's hard to. Is there anything else you do, or any other thing that you would be curious if our community would comment on?
I have a couple of things in my head I'm seeing. I'm seeing a picture of me on the beach walking. So doing things other than where I'm at, like forcing myself to get out and do other stuff, which I don't particularly enjoy doing. But once I get there, I'm okay.
So physical activity is important for you to
but it doesn't have to be hard cardio. It's just like getting outside and
moving.
I think that's what that 5-minute thing is really good for. Like I sat a lot longer the last couple days, and then I have bad back issues, and so then my back was completely upset today. It was just like, what did you do to me? You suck. I was so mad. It was like,
yeah.
So there is a part of physically moving, and then I think there's also a component of knowing that, okay, if I'm going to hyper focus on something, that's okay. But telling myself, hey, the next couple of days, you might be low energy, and it's okay. You're making this conscious choice to hyper focus. Great.
Yeah.
And you just need to be aware that maybe tomorrow and the next day, or, a little bit longer, like you're not going to be totally up to speed, and don't beat yourself up for it.
So that self-talk becomes really important in terms of what you're telling yourself.
Yeah. And I would also surmise that it might be helpful for me to tell you guys, hey, just a heads up, I'm hyper-focusing today.
Yes.
And I might be out of it for the next couple of days.
Yeah, we could even just have like an emoji that's like your hair's on fire or something. I don't know. Something like some crazy eyes like, I'm in it. Absolutely. Because the people you love don't always know you're doing it because it's not always obvious, right?
Oh, yeah, no. I look at other people when they're on their computers and I don't think, or they're doing something like, I don't think that they don't realize like how much I'm doing. I look at them and I assume they're doing the same amount.
This is 100%. Like I'm on my computer. I'm like, click, click, click. Oh, let's go look here. Like my brain is taking like a little like saunter in the park. And yours is like on some kind of like, I've watched you. It makes me physically ill. I cannot watch you on a computer. Like when we're screen sharing. Yeah. You're going so fast. And I'm like, wait, what? I can't even follow you. And it makes me like motion sick.
I know. And I just assumed that everybody did that.
No. And so you being on computer and computer time means something totally different than what mine is. Mine's like, oh, let me look up this article. Oh, that's interesting. Well, what if we went over? I would drive you crazy. I think I do drive you crazy.
I'm like, just click it. Click it, Michelle. I know. Michelle, how did I teach computers for so long and was so patient?
You are a saint is what you are because you are so kind. You do not judge other people's limitations.
Yeah.
Because I think we're judged.
That's a good point, yeah.
And so, you have this superpower, but it was invisible.
Do you know, it's so true. And there are a few times in my life, especially in high school, where I was not kind to people. And I still remember that to this day.
Oh.
And like, if I ever meet them, I'm going to apologize. If I ever see them again, I want to apologize. It may not have ever meant anything to them, but for me, I know that I was not my best. And yeah, it still haunts me. It's horrible, but yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, we all have like our mean girl moments, right, in life that we regret. But I think when you've felt so much shaming coming at you for so long, you know that it's not something you want to do to anyone else for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you just spending time and kind of digging into this whole concept of energy and how your energy flows. And I love the idea of us really having some sort of a signal that you're in hyper-focus mode so that I don't worry about you when you're off the grid for a day or so.
It's a shame that our little Rosie's brain logo isn't an emoji because that's what I would send you. Like just a... Hello, I'm in it.
Oh, yeah. I think you have to get those authorized by somebody, right? But we can at least have the picture. And
That's
I think
true.
I can send you the picture of it. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for hanging out. And we appreciate all of our community listening in. And if you have any ideas for us about how you manage your energy or questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, we would.
Love you, Meg.
I love you too, Michelle.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Sisters. This series has focused more specifically on ADHD and all of the symptoms in my beautiful brain. If you enjoy this episode as much as we enjoy laughing with each other, please share it with someone you think would benefit from this conversation. Make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're currently listening to so that you can get notified each week. Next week, I just found out we'll be talking about how you stay still with ADHD. Oh dear. I have so much to say. But until then, here's to a great end of the week. And remember, stay curious.